You ever look at an ostrich? Like, really look at an ostrich? It's just one of the weirdest looking animals ever. They're all grown with a baby bird looking fuzzy head. Stay like that their whole lives. All giving you that deep inquisitive stare like they're deeply analyzing you. But you can still tell there's just not much going on. A literal bird brain, with those weirdly muscular legs like when people like to draw Kirby buff. Well, just imagine what it would be for that freakish creature to just diddle you at in public in front of a laughing crowd. That's exactly what happened to one Something Awful user, in a story that's just been burned into my mind for decades. But don't you worry, he gets his comeuppance. For today's video, let's take a look at Something Awful's Tales from the Zoo. Believe it or not, this video about a classic Something Awful article is actually sponsored by SomethingAwful.com themselves. If you've been watching this channel, you've probably heard me say at some point that this or that thing originated from the Something Awful forums. For example, we got stuff like Super Hornio Brothers, Swap.avi, or Tub Girl. It's also where stuff like All Your Base Belong to Us or Slenderman came from. And it's still as much a classic online forum as it ever was. No tricky social media algorithms or anything like that. Just one of the last surviving remnants of the old internet I talk about all the time on this channel. It's a comedy forum, so come to laugh and make other people laugh. $10 gets you an account for life. There's no monthly subscriptions, you just pay once and you're there forever. Unless, of course, you post badly and then you get banned for life and have to pay again. So, just if you post there, post good. They also wanted me to make it clear that if you're overly bothered by other people's race, gender, sexual orientation, or if you're so uptight that you can't laugh at yourself even a little, or if you just want to come to promote your YouTube channel or some kind of crypto scam, the forum's not for you then, and just, don't waste your money. That being said though, it caters to all different kinds of interests. Gaming, cooking, football, silverware collections. If you would like to argue at length about the hidden symbolism of the Goofy movie, this is the forum for you. Just go to somethingawful.com and sign up today. Something Awful's been around for a long time. One of the first really popular comedy sites online. I spent so much time in my life back in the day looking at their articles, stuff like Cliff Yablonsky Hates You, where, he makes fun of people's physical appearances, which is what the internet's all about. Just so much content that you'd have to, at this point, to get through all of it, you had to be like one of those ancient monks. But of everything I've ever read on that website, there's one thing that sticks out in my brain so solidly, and I've heard this sentiment echoed by a lot of people, that being the Tales from the Zoo series. That being said though, I don't recall this being a thing that went terribly viral outside of Something Awful, like Super Hornio Brothers or anything like that. So if you weren't actively reading the site at the time, you probably missed it. The first installment of Tales from the Zoo was published on April of 2003, and it's a collection of stories from one forum user, Big Peeler. Ryan Adams, who collected these stories for the Comedy Goldmine section, noted that Something Awful forum users come from a wide variety of backgrounds. And of all of them, Big Peeler's experiences as a zookeeper really stuck out. The first story he tells, Big Peeler gets it in the ass from an ostrich. He begins by talking about the process of picking the yard, which means cleaning up the animal turds. This was one of the main tasks of the zookeepers, and they had to get it done as early as possible. Otherwise, people are going to be coming into the zoo and just staring at a bunch of turds all over the place. For some animals, the zookeepers had to do this while they were separated from the animals, preferably while they were asleep. Because, I'm sure you've seen some pretty graphic videos of tigers at the zoo. But remember, this video is sponsored by Something Awful, not LiveLeak. The ostriches, though, they were generally safe to be around. Generally. He goes on to describe how dumb the ostriches are. As he puts it, look at the size of their heads. It's as big as your fist, and their brains are as big as your left nut. In fact, these animals are so dumb that sometimes they just do Big Peeler's job for him. They are so fucking stupid that they would take a shit and turn around and eat it. We would laugh our asses off watching them do this. Their tail would go up in the air and this huge greenish brown plop would come out, then they'd turn around and look at it, then gobble it down. You would see this softball-sized lump go down their necks and they just walk off. Morons. This guy really hates the ostriches, but I'm sure you'll understand why. Now, the ostriches are a popular attraction at the zoo, not just because they're so weird looking, but also they do this thing. Every 2 minutes or so, they'll bend their neck into like an S shape. They stretch their wings out and just run around in circles. One gets started and they all start going. It's contagious like a classroom of remedial children. In case you're having a hard time picturing what I'm describing here, the San Diego Zoo actually has a video of it. It's entitled Ostriches Stuck on Spin Cycle, and honestly, it's a bit more graceful than I expected, especially considering how weird the ostriches look. But once again, I can see why Big Peeler doesn't see the beauty in the ostrich dance. So when they'd go to pick the ostrich yard, it was a two-man team. On this fateful day, the team was him and his friend Gary. One man would have a shovel and a rake to collect the ostrich leavings, while the other one would man the big plastic garbage can and stand guard, in case the ostriches got a little suspicious, because if you recall, they do enjoy to partake in their own feces. So that garbage can was for them a smorgasbord on wheels, and if they got close enough to partake, it'd be a huge mess. He also noted the risks of an ostrich attack. The only harm an ostrich can really do to you is attack you with their middle toe. They kick forward and can open a person's belly up with one swipe. Hey, it's what they do. But attacks like that are very rare with females, and that's all we had in this yard. So they're out here picking the yard, and they're not particularly concerned with the danger of the ostriches, or for that matter, the grossness of the poop. They're just completely desensitized to it at this point. He even described how sometimes they just grab a turd with their hands and kinda shoot it at the garbage can, just Kobe with the turd. What they're mostly concerned about is the public. They're always trying to hop over the ropes into the yards, or trying to pet the animals or feed them their soda cups or some stupid shit like that. Zookeepers hate the public. Anyhow, at this point, they've gone through the yard and the garbage can's filled up completely. So Gary has to get a new garbage can, leaving Big Peeler alone with the birds and the public. While he's by himself, he notices a few eggs. Remember that this yard is all female, so they're definitely not fertilized. So what they would do is they would just grab the eggs and bring them to the commissary and have themselves a big-ass ostrich omelet. That might sound gross to you, but honestly, I'd try it. Ostrich meat ain't that bad, so why would the eggs be? So he goes to pick up these eggs, and as soon as he does, he senses a presence behind him. And he drew an MS Paint masterpiece depicting this scene. In a second, I see this ostrich out of the corner of my eye. Before I could turn around, she sort of knocked me down on one knee. Why, you motherfucker. And I tried to stand up. Bam! She bumps me again from behind, and this time she knocks me flat on my stomach. I can hear the people standing on the edge of the ostrich yard laughing. Here, I'm getting attacked by this pea-brained bird, and they're laughing their asses off. And then, 400 pounds or so of ostrich climbs on top of him, starts to hump him, thrusting right at his ass. At this point, the crowd are completely losing their minds and cheering on the ostrich to have its way with them. Gary sees what's going on and runs back, yelling and waving his arms in the air. This was not a good idea, as the act of going like this made him look like a bigger threat to the ostrich. So now it's even more aggressively trying to protect her nest. She leaves Big Peeler alone and starts to chase Gary. And as he said before, one of them gets started and they all start going, so now there's 10 ostriches chasing them. In an attempt to confuse the birds, they try to run in an S pattern. The audience is now howling with laughter, and hell, I couldn't blame them. Here we are, running around like Stevie Wonder at a track meet. I've got 5 birds after me, and Gary's got 5 after him. In any case, it kinda is working, and they manage to get halfway across the yard. But then, one of the birds manages to trap Gary against the wall. She's pecking at his head and kicking him, and he's screaming for help. And as he said before, it's rare, but these animals can do damage if they want. So Big Peeler, to save his friend, picks up a rake and starts swinging. He hits the bird in its ass, getting its attention. Then he swings it right at her neck. What comes next, you know how I said this story is just completely burned into my memory? It's really what happens next that's just it's such a clear visual that never leaves me. Accompanied, of course, by another MS Paint masterpiece. The blow had broken the ostrich's neck. Not just like, my neck's broken, like it snapped it like a twig. Just 18 inches of neck dangling with the head still attached. And even in this state, the bird continues to chase Big Peeler. Eventually though, she starts to lose her senses, starts running in all kinds of crazy directions, starts jumping, and then it falls over dead in front of a crowd of screaming adults and crying children. Everyone's screaming and covering their eyes and calling us names. I'm like, hey, we almost got killed here, folks. Fuck those ostriches. They get back to the barn and debrief their boss on what just happened. And at this point, they're sure they're going to lose their jobs. Especially since now they've got a big crowd of people who are angry that they just watched zookeepers kill an ostrich. Luckily for them, there was a guy who saw the whole thing and told the head curator what really happened. That basically they had to defend themselves in a life or death situation, and thus they were able to keep their jobs. Then this happens. We went back out with a wheelbarrow and took the corpse up to the hospital. They did a thorough examination and deemed it disease-free. The following statement is totally true, I swear on my dead mother's eyes. The next week, we ate it. We cooked it like a turkey and ate it. Since it died of natural causes, it was totally safe. We had huge ovens in the commissary since we prepared food for the whole zoo there. we had a huge zoo BQ featuring the ostrich. Drumsticks as big as a watermelon. Totally fucking surreal. Oh, it tastes just like beef. Honestly, very gamey. Now, I know even though he says it's totally true, some people are gonna see that and be like, oh yeah, it's probably made up. But honestly, one thing that really sells this story to me is that he very accurately described the taste of ostrich in 2003. Because at the time, I mean, now you can kind of get ostrich all over the place. Well, you can literally just go on Wild Fork and order yourself a couple ostrich steaks. But at the time, people weren't really eating ostrich like that. Poor Kurt Angle got so much grief for advertising ostrich jerky. But it actually does kind of taste like beef, while having more protein and less fat than chicken. At this point, it probably sounds like I'm being paid off by Big Ostrich, but I'm just stating facts here. Anyway though, this is probably my all-time favorite Something Awful story, and the Tales from the Zoo series in general is just worth reading. So I'm gonna link all the articles in the description below. And if you like this video, turn on notifications and check out my video about Super Hornio Brothers.